victory or defeat. It's up to me to decide. But how can I expect to win if I never try? I just can't give up now. I've come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me the road would be easy, and I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. Never said there wouldn't be trials, never said I wouldn't fall, never said that everything would go the way I wanted to go. But when my back is against the wall and I feel the hope is gone, I'll just lift my head up to the sky and say, help me to be strong. Oh, I just can't give up now. I've come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me the road would be easy, and I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. I know you didn't bring me out here to leave me lonely, even when I can't see clearly. I know that you are with me, so I just can't give up now. I've come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me the road would be easy, and I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. I just can't give up now. I've come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me the road would be easy, and I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. I just can't give up now. I've come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me the road would be easy, and I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. I just can't give up now. I've come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me the road would be easy, and I don't believe he brought me this far. Don't believe he brought me this, and I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me.
Welcome, welcome to the Miami Collective. We are thrilled to have you here with us once again. For this Vespers, we have a speaker, a special speaker, Pastor Stephen, who will bring us a message on community. And for Tea Talks, we have a local church youth leader that will bring her experience to light. We are happy to have you here. Enjoy.
All right, welcome to another Tea Talks. We have here Saibet Rodriguez, right, joining us. She is a youth leader at another local Miami church, Miami Central Spanish church, and you are pretty much like the youth director and all that stuff.
I mean, sort of.
Yeah.
Not really, but I just help all around at church.
Not officially. You're also cousins with my wife, Nanivet,
Yes,
which kind of
that's
makes
true.
you my cousin. So welcome to the table. Welcome to Tea Talks. I want to start off with asking a question that we ask everybody who sits here.
Okay.
And it's, what are you passionate about?
So, I'm passionate about a couple things, actually. So, I think my major thing that I'm passionate about is music.
Okay.
So I grew up around a lot of music from my mom's side of the family. All of my aunts and my uncles, they either sing or they play an instrument. And my mom sings too, and she taught me how to sing. So I think since a very early age, music is something that I've always been really interested in, and it has become my passion. And I could go on and on about music, but I was always in band. I was always in choir. I took 4 years of singing lessons, so basically that's like my major thing.
Yeah.
But I'm also passionate about the arts. I'm not a very good drawer or painter, but I like to try, to like doodle and stuff like that. I also like serving, like community service, like going to clean a beach or something, or helping out at like a shelter. That's something I'm passionate about.
How did you get introduced to those things? Because you mentioned your mom was the influential one into getting you into like singing and into choir. And what instrument do you play? You say you were in band. What do you play?
I was in band, so I started around 4th grade, and I played the flute. So the metal one that you like.
Oh, the sideways.
Yeah,
one.
the side one.
I played the really horrible one, the plastic one. That's. Just
all of us.
Yeah.
In
Oh, okay.
elementary, yeah.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Yeah.
I don't know why my parents showed up to that.
I don't know why they give you that in school. It's just like it sounds bad.
Yes. Can we edit that sound out? I'm just kidding. No. That's true. Yes. And so your mom got you into music. What were the influential people that got you into service? And the other thing you mentioned was arts, right?
Yeah. So service has really been a part of really my family in general, like both my mom's side and my dad's side.
How so?
So my dad is a pastor, but before he was a pastor, he was a teacher. So he's always been in contact with the youth, and he's always been in contact with like people and helping and serving. And my mom, she works at a hospital, so that kind of plays a role too. And growing up in the church, it was always kind of like put into our culture that we should always serve. Okay. One way or another, also in my school as well. So I think that's something that I really...
You went to like a private school or a public school?
I went to a private school, a Christian private school.
Nice.
And the community around school and around church was very similar. So we would always serve some way, one way or another, either at church or school. Like I remember that in school, I think it was in middle school, that my Spanish teacher, she opened like an extra credit part for the class, and was that you would go tutor little kids at like this, I think it was an orphanage that we had back in Puerto Rico. FYI, like I just moved here like around 3 years ago. I live 18 years in Puerto Rico, so so we went there, and I did that for like a year. Like after school, maybe like 3-4 days a week, like tutor people, like kids for
Did
like
you
an
need
hour.
the extra credit?
No. I'm actually really good at Spanish, but I like going because I don't know, it was a cool extracurricular, and I like kids.
Right.
So.
And I love what you mentioned, because I think what's missing many times in our lives, right, for you to get into the service projects and doing all those things, is the opportunity. And sometimes the opportunity is there or isn't there, based on if the older people, right, in this case your teacher, is willing to go that extra mile and say, all right, let me organize something. And many times that's kind of like what's missing in our group or circle of friends, or wherever it is that we hang out or whatnot, whether that be at church or somewhere else, that person that's willing to take that extra step and decide like, all right, this is where we're going to go eat. All right, this is the movie we're going to watch, or this is the event we're going to go to. But more than that, it's like that person has to actually do the research about what event to go to and when and how much it's going to be and things like that. And it takes extra effort, extra work, extra stress, right, than anybody else in the group. And so for your teacher to have done that for you is amazing. Nani's the one that does that for me. So you're living proof that, you know, PKs turn out okay. So,
we do, guys. Yay.
So that's nice. I mean, you're only like 20, so no, I'm kidding.
Who knows? Maybe I'll turn evil.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But side note, what are you drinking?
So guys, Nanny and Brian kind of introduced me to Brewing Buddha. This is the first time I'm trying this. I have a...
It's not a religion or anything. It's
it's
just coffee house.
Yeah, it's just cafe and art house. So if you're in the Miami area, check them out. So I'm drinking like an iced peach tea. First time that I'm trying this. Is very good.
Okay.
So if you like the refreshers from Starbucks, this is very close to it. It's really good. And then I have
very close to it, as in like taste wise, or very close as in like, oh, it's almost at par with it. Are you saying like Starbucks?
I think this one tastes a little bit more natural than Starbucks.
I see.
Yeah, but what I mean about like it's similar, that it's like a cold fruity drink. Yeah, because that's kind of like what the refresher tastes like. But I feel like this one tastes more natural though. Okay. The Starbucks one tastes kind of like syrupy sometimes.
I see. Yeah.
This one tastes good. What are you drinking?
I'm glad. Well, I'm drinking mate. It's like this herb that gets shipped from this country, Argentina. And you know, most people know. But yeah, I'm drinking mate like every other time that we've sat here. So the theme for this whole month for us has been about community. Okay. And so I kind of want to ask you, one for you personally, right? For Saibet, right? What does community look like? How would you define that for yourself?
So community for me, that's a really good question. I think community can be really defined in a lot of ways. Yeah. It just really depends on what your experience has been.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, really community is just like having a good support group and people that motivate you to be present, to help other people, to just, you know, like have like a sisterhood or a brotherhood of people that you can rely on. Okay. So that's kind of what it boils down to for me. Yeah.
And is there like a specific number that you'd say, okay, you have community when you have one person, 3 people, 20 people? Does the number matter, or is just the feeling of one that people are there to support you and to serve together?
Well, I feel like for me, like community means probably more than 2 people. Okay. Because if not, then that would just be like my partner is here supporting me, you know what I'm saying? Right. But again, to other people, it could vary. But for me, I think it would be around 2 people, 3 people, maybe 5. It could go up to maybe 20. But I think what I like about community is that you have that relationship. You know, like it's not just like, hey, like I see you this day and then like, okay, like having community is like going deep into each other's lives and like being present in every part of your community's life, like in the good and the bad. So it's sometimes kind of hard to do that in a group of like 20 people, right? Because it's hard to connect with a lot of people at the same time. So maybe 5 people is a good number for me. Yeah. Sweet. To experience like authentic, like in-depth community, 5 people. That makes sense, because community has like a wide range of like, you know, if you could talk about, the community of your church or your school or your community of like in your neighborhood. So that varies, but 3 to 5 people is good. It makes sense to me. I mean, we Christians, we believe in the Trinity of God, right? And there are 3. And they're talking about community consistently throughout the scriptures. And it's like, well, what do you know about community? Well, there's 3 of us, so we know a little bit. So you're a youth leader at your local church. What are some things that perhaps you guys do that help you experience that community? Or what are some things that you wish you did that would help you
experience that community?
I think something that has really helped my church, again, I've only been here around 2 years. It's going to be 3 now in June.
Nice.
And I think that's something that has helped my church since we got here is the life group.
Okay.
So life group is our small group at church, and we adopted some guidelines for our life group. And those guidelines help us to be vulnerable, and they help us to like open up the space.
Okay.
Like create a safe place for our youth to like be vulnerable and be open to topics regarding the Bible, because that's usually what we discuss, but also with like any other topic or problem that they have. And ever since we started the life group, I think that our level of like understanding and empathy has really grown, because we were able to see, oh, like I'm not the only one experiencing this, even though kind of like in the back of our minds we know that, oh, like everybody passes through this,
right?
But when it's your particular situation, sometimes you're like, nobody's gonna understand me.
Yeah.
Like this is just me.
Yeah.
But then when we're in group, like if you hear somebody else talking about something that they learned from this or that, you're like, oh, like I can learn how to manage this certain situation like they did. Or you could be like, oh, like I'm not alone in this, like there's someone that I can relate to.
Right.
And also the good thing about life group is that we invite people that are not usually from our church, so that even broadens, you know, more the topic and the discussion and our point of views as well.
Yeah.
So I think that really has helped kind of like create that sense of community, at least in my church.
Okay.
Something that maybe we're lacking is just like taking that community, like our little circle of safe place, like outside of church.
Okay.
So in Miami, like it's very like difficult to maintain an identity, because there's just so many like attractions or like so many things that you could be. So as youth, like I feel like sometimes it's hard for us to like maintain that type of community and that like our values and stuff like that outside of church. So I think that's a challenge of when we try to like take community outside of church. And I think that that's something that we really are trying to work on, especially my church is like in a very like populated area. It's near Calle Ocho. So we have a lot of people around our church community that are not Christians.
Okay.
Not necessarily Adventists, just not Christian at all.
Yeah.
And
unchurched.
Yeah. So we're always trying to like reach them like with having like Thanksgiving breakfast and stuff like that. But I feel like we could do more as youth, as a community, to like reach out. So I think that's something that we could be lacking.
Okay, sweet. So what I got from that, essentially, when it comes to discipling young people, when it comes to creating that sense of community, is small groups. Like you need to have small groups. And I guess for the parents that are listening to this right now, sign up your child for a small group, and it's not necessarily Sabbath school, you know, because I doubt that on Saturday morning when you show up for Sabbath school or on Zoom or whatever, excuse me, that it has the same effect than your sorry, I want to say accountability group, but what's it called? Your life group. So that's a great share. And second, I think that's one of the difficulties with, you know, being able to stay true to your identity even outside of, you know, your church group, is the fact that, especially here in Miami, people come and go. And so it's like largely just you come here for a season of life and then you move. And a lot of our identity is tied up in community. It's tied up to our friends. It's tied up with like who you hang out with. And when those people just come and go and you're still there, it really affects the way that you, one, can identify and view yourself in relation to the world. So I think those are key points, and I love that. Lastly, Sai, you know, or Thai, right? What are you up to? Like, what are you doing right now?
So I recently graduated from my AA in biology, and now I am slowly applying to my bachelor's to finish my bachelor's to then hopefully go to medical school. So that's academic wise, that's really what I'm focusing right now, and just trying to like do community service hours for my application and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, for church, I'm like you say, I'm like really involved. I'm a youth leader, so I'm really involved in like Vespers. I'm really involved in our life group.
In Vespers and other churches.
Yeah, too. I'm everywhere, guys. I'm everywhere. And then, yeah, so that's really what I'm focusing on right now. I mean, when the pandemic was in here, I was doing a lot more stuff, I guess, but not kind of limited. So I just really stay like in church and school, and maybe like some extra like working at a doctor's office or shadowing or something and stuff like that.
Okay. And what about what you're doing right now gets you like, are you most excited about? Are you saying like, oh, today is, at 5 o'clock I have to do this, and you're actually excited about doing that?
Drinking coffee.
Drinking coffee. Hey, yes, that's
yeah,
fine.
Coffee is like my thing. No, but I think one of the things that I'm really excited about is that I found this like community service group, like I don't even know what it's called, to be honest. It's called Miami Rescue Mission.
Okay.
And it's like,
I don't know what it's called really. It's called this.
I don't know if it's an organization though, or if it's like, I don't know,
gotcha.
that type of but it's called Miami Rescue Mission. And they do a lot of community service. Like they have a whole bunch of different programs. And this week I have an interview with the leader. Her name is Vanessa Cooper.
Okay.
And that's something that I'm really excited about, because like I said, like because of that pandemic, like I haven't been able to kind of like keep doing that community service.
Right. Yeah.
Like I didn't do it like every week, but like at least once a month, like I would do something.
Right.
Either by myself or with the youth at church. And that has been kind of like lacking.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited because I got the interview with her this week to kind of just see like the feel of the program and see what I could possibly help in the future.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited because they have like a children and women's building. Okay. Which I really, 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 really want to work at.
All right.
Not work at, volunteer.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about that. But other than that, like I think I'm really excited because my church is going from virtual church to like face-to-face church. So we're in that transition which can be really hard because some people are like, no, we don't want to go, but then yes, we want to go, but then
yeah.
But it's really interesting because now our team is back together. Like we're really getting creative with a lot of stuff that we're doing at church, and that's really exciting.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really where I am right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. If you could say anything perhaps to the teenager or the collegiate or their parent that's watching, do you have anything to share with us?
Yeah, I guess for any teenager or youth or young adult that is listening, I think thinking of the theme of community, in order for you to be a good like element in your community, whether it be like your church community, your work community, your family community, or whatever, I think the first thing that we need to make sure is that we're okay. Okay. And that we're taken care of, because I don't think we can pour like grace or forgiveness or patience to somebody else's cup if we don't have that in our cup first. So I think like take the time to really like think about where am I mentally, where am I spiritually, where am I like physically, before you start to engage in community, because sometimes working with community can really take a toll on you. Okay. Working with other people can sometimes be very challenging. So I think that's something that I would say. And don't give up, because like everybody has a purpose, especially us as Christians. Like we do have a purpose either at church or at school or something. So if you're lacking that purpose, talk to a mentor, talk to Brian, talk to any other person that you feel comfortable with, and just, being open and vulnerable can really help you to like think about where you're going and where you're at. To the parent, I would just say, the thing that the youth, at least my experience personally, the thing that the youth really needs is just to have your support. One thing that I have learned is that sometimes when we are trying to do things right, we correct people, but we do it like not in the best way. So I learned that if you do want to correct someone, or if you do want to guide someone, you need to have a lot of patience, especially youth. Like, we think we know everything, but we really don't. And we really are just like a learning process, and we all went through this when we were young. So your support means a lot to us, like a lot to have you in our team. And if you are there to guide us and to help us, remember that we will make mistakes, but there's a beauty in failure at the same time. So if you can help us through that failure, and if you can encourage us along the way, that would be really, really appreciated. So,
yeah, for sure. I mean, failure is half of experience, right?
Yeah.
I feel. Thank you for sharing that with us, Ibet.
problem.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for bringing your wonderful water bottle. Yeah, thank you for sharing your wisdom.
No problem. It was really a pleasure to be here. I hope we can do it again next time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
All
thank
right.
you. Bye, guys.
I was a wretch. I remember who I was. I was lost. I was blind. I was running out of time. Sin separated. The breach was far too wide. But from the far side of the chasm, you held me in your side. So you made a way across the great divide, left behind heaven's throne to build it here inside. And there at the cross, you paid the debt I owed, broke my chains, freed my soul. For the first time I had hope. Thank you, Jesus, for the blood applied. Thank you, Jesus, it has washed me white. Thank you, Jesus, you have saved my life, brought me from the darkness into glorious light.
You took my place, laid inside my tomb of sin. You were buried for 3 days, and then you walked right out again. And no death has no sting, and life has no end. For I have been transformed by the blood of the Lamb.
Thank you, Jesus, for the blood of God. Thank you, Jesus, it has washed me white. Thank you, Jesus, you have saved my life, brought me from the darkness into and the wonder-working power of the blood that calls us sons and daughters. We are ransomed by the Father through the blood, the blood. Thank you, Jesus, for the blood applied. Thank you, Jesus, it has washed me white. Thank you, Jesus, you have saved my life. Brought me from the darkness into glorious light.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name is Steven Sagamini. I'm the youth pastor in Avon Park, Florida. If you don't know where Avon Park is, that is totally okay. Avon Park is pretty much in the middle of Florida, about an hour and a half south of Orlando, maybe like 2.5, 3 hours from you guys there in Miami. Just want to give a shout out to your pastor, Pastor Brian, and his wife, Nani. Thank you for the opportunity, man. Hope to see you guys soon. Much love from Val and I. Pastor Brian shared with me the conversation you guys have been having, the topic that you've been going over on community and closing the gap. And it's one that's special to me. It's one that I have grappled with through my life. And I hope that some of the things that I've learned, I can be able to share with you as I've been reflecting on this. I want to start with the first thing. And the first thing is to lighten up, right? If you're anything like me, you can oftentimes feel a lot of pressure, a lot of anxiety in social situations, right? Or even in community, right? In a community of people that are different than you. And for me, oftentimes that anxiety looks three different ways. The first one is this initial anxiety, right? It's this anxiety where I am concerned about how I'm going to come across, right? I'm thinking about all the things that could go wrong in that situation, right? And then after that, there's the during the moment anxiety, which is when my initial anxiety now collides with the actual moment, right? I'm seeing things in front of me. I'm encountering the people. I'm in the situation, and I'm thinking about everything from how I drink a bottle of water to how I'm standing, to how I'm talking, to my facial expressions, right? And there's all this anxiety, all this anxiousness that I feel. And then lastly, it's the afterwards anxiety, right? The things that I'm feeling after it's over. And all three of these can oftentimes make it so difficult because for me, I'm worried about, man, how did they perceive me? How did they see me? And the reality is our anxieties are real when it comes to this conversation surrounding community, right? They're real. We need to acknowledge them. We need to validate the feelings that we have and recognize that oftentimes in community, we aren't being our authentic selves, right? The reality is in church, oftentimes churches and certain spaces are breeding grounds for us being inauthentic, for us not being who we truly are. And the reality is anxiety is what pushes us to do and to say things and to be things that we aren't actually who we truly are, right? And so we can have moments where we kind of feel like we're pressing, right? And we oftentimes embarrass ourselves worse off than if we would just have been true to who we are, right? And we kind of are wavering between these extremes, right? Of trying to fit in with this group or fit in with that group. And we aren't truly respecting and validating who we are. And this makes me think about somebody in the Bible. His name was Peter. Peter was one of Jesus's most prominent disciples, right? He was always a guy that was ready to step into a situation, always ready to do what Jesus asked, right? There was a time when Jesus came to wash the disciples' feet, and Peter thought it was so offensive for the Savior of the universe to wash his feet. And Jesus was like, no, if you don't do this, then you don't have a part with me. So then he goes to the other extreme, right? And says, okay, then wash my head, wash my hands. Right? Wash me completely over. And Jesus is like, no, that's not necessary. Let's just take one thing at a time. Right? Peter is kind of like so many of us, right? And ultimately for him, that came to a culmination when Jesus was going to the cross and he was met with this anxiety of, oh man, like the Savior of the universe is leaving. What do I do? And Jesus said, hey, you're going to deny me. And Peter was like, I will never deny you. I'm not capable of that. Right? And few verses later, we see where Peter denies Jesus 3 times because he's now met with the anxiety of the community, right? As Jesus is going to the cross, he denies him and says, I have no part with him, right? I don't know who he is, right? And so for Peter, oftentimes we have that same syndrome where we try to be something that we're not, and we don't set realistic expectations. So the reality is we got to lighten up. We got to lighten up on ourselves, and we got to recognize and set realistic expectations and know what it is we're dealing with. If we feel anxiety, hey, maybe I need to take some time to myself before socializing with people. Maybe I need to realize that, hey, maybe I need to do some breathing exercises, right? Things that can help me be more truly who I am, right? And so that leads me to the second thing. Second thing is in community, right? In trying to close the gap, it is listening. Listening is so important, right? Oftentimes when we think about socializing and we think about connecting with people, we're always worried about saying the right thing, right? And the reality is listening is so important. When I think about growing up in school, I was always often told, because I used to talk a lot in class, that I got 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? It's something that we're always told about. And so often in social situations, we're worried about saying the right thing when really we should be worried about making sure that we're listening, right? Making sure that we're actively a part of that process. See, the crazy thing about listening and why it's so important and powerful in situations when it comes to making people comfortable, especially as we've been journeying as a nation through racial reconciliation and even in churches, right? Listening causes you to stop being the expert. It causes you to stop feeling like you need to say the right thing or do the right thing. It causes you now to instead value and validate the feelings of somebody else, right? It now causes you to think about them. Right now you're prioritizing somebody else. See, listening is a posture. It is a way of life. It is saying, what can I do to make someone else feel comfortable, right? To make someone else feel valued in this situation, right? It takes us from a situation of being experts, right? And feeling like we need to explain everything or offer fancy advice or just be a great orator, and instead validate and open ourselves up to people. That could look like sitting on a couch and listening to somebody's story, which is a situation I find myself doing a lot, where the people that are different than me, people that I think I have nothing in common with, finding a way to connect with them. And it's also just a way of life, right? Seeing a situation from somebody else's perspective, right? Researching, looking and saying, what can I do to understand and see that, yeah, there's these gaps that are here, but what can I do to close that gap, right? What can I do to find that? And I think in that process, you begin to realize that there's more that connects you to people than there is that separates you, right? And Jesus was amazing at that. Jesus didn't focus on saying a bunch of words. He didn't focus on saying a ton of things, but rather he focused on listening to people, right? A story that comes to mind is when he comes to a guy who had been at a pool in Bethesda. This is in John chapter 5. And he asks the guy, hey, tell me, what have you been dealing with? What's been going on? And the guy shares that for 38 years, he had been laying at this pool hoping for healing. And Jesus then asks him a simple question: do you want to be made well? Right? And Jesus there is closing the gap between what he feels like is impossible, and that's healing and salvation. And Jesus just steps in and first listens and validates what he's feeling. And some of Jesus' most epic moments came with just 1 or 2 words or a few words, right? When he looks at Peter when Peter asks to walk on water, Jesus just says, come, right? When he's calling his disciples, he just says, follow me. When he encounters the woman who had committed adultery, right, and is brought before Jesus, embarrassed in front of the whole community, all Jesus says to her is, where are your accusers? Go and sin no more. See, Jesus recognized that listening was yes, like something that you did in a conversation, but it was also a posture. It was a way of living that validates the feelings of someone else. So in our communities, right, as we're thinking about trying to build and close gaps, let's try to be listeners, not just in our conversations with people, but also in our way of living, right, in our posture of life. The last thing and the third thing is leverage. Leverage your story, leverage who you are, leverage your experiences, your perspective, and realize that they're really, really valuable. They're important. See, I was in a Bible study the other day, and oftentimes the way I see the Bible and I see the world kind of from my lens, right, as a brown man who has experienced the things that I've experienced, right, and I bring that perspective to how I study the Bible, to how I interact with people. But I was in this study, and someone that came from a totally different walk of life, she was a young lady who had grown up in this community and had seen so many different things, had been through so many different experiences that I had never really ever related to. And she began sharing this and seeing the Bible from that perspective, and it opened my eyes to realize that in community, right, when we feel comfortable, we can begin to leverage and share with people the very things that maybe we've been ashamed of in our lives, right? There are elements of her that she was sharing that that you're thinking like, that if it was reversed, I would be very concerned to share, very worried. But she felt safe in the community. And within that, I began to connect with her, and others in the group were connecting and seeing, wow, there is something special about this person that is closing the gap between our inability to understand each other. See, oftentimes in community, what happens is we hide the very superpowers that God has given us, and our superpower is our story, right? We are made to feel many times that our stories and our experiences and maybe our flaws are bad or that they're wrong. But the reality is the things that we call weaknesses in Jesus, right, when we give them to God, can actually make us stronger, right? It actually points to a God that is strong, right? The things that we think of as liabilities are actually assets when they are gifted and used by God, right? The things that make us unique, the things that we might dislike about ourselves, when they're turned and gifted to God, His strength begins to be manifested. In the Bible says that, right? It says, in our weakness, He is made strong. God is made strong. So when we think about building communities, when we think about closing the gap, I invite you to share the things that you feel are flaws, the things that you feel you're weak in, and recognize that those things might be the very thing that somebody connects with. Those might be the very thing that somebody says, oh, wow, like their vulnerability is connecting with me. Their vulnerability is allowing me to see the world differently. So just to recap, the first thing is to make sure that you are lightening up, right? That you cut yourself some slack and recognize the things that you're dealing with, right? Recognize that, hey, there's some limitations that I have, and those aren't bad. You're a human being, right? And realizing that you gotta lighten up and make yourself comfortable. The second thing is to listen. Right? So often we prioritize talking over listening, and listening is so important. And that's something that Jesus demonstrated. And finally, to leverage your story, right? To leverage what you've experienced, what you've gone through, and share it with others. Because as we do that, as we bring our weaknesses to the forefront, it is there that God can strengthen us, and God can strengthen our communities. God bless. Take care. We'll see you around.
Thank you so much, Pastor Stephen. We really love the message that you have brought to us. We are so invested in this topic about community, and we have learned so much and need to keep learning about this and share it with those around us. We hope to see you next time on our next Vespers for the Miami Collective. Remember to follow us at The Collective MT on Instagram, and subscribe to the Miami Temple YouTube channel for more Miami Collective Vespers information. Have a good one.